it says the session is live. The Hangout is live. Okay. This is Vance Stevens in Al Ain, UAE. I'm talking here to Benjamin Stewart about his new academic writing course. Today is the 3rd of January, 2016, the new year. Happy New Year to everybody. And this is Learning Together. And we do this every Sunday. And we have with us two people in the Hangout. We have Maria Colusa from Argentina, and we have Gordon from Japan. And both of them are quite welcome to say hi and put themselves on the recording. And now that I've started, I'll put my regular glasses back on. Okay, we've started. So, Maria, Gordon, would you like to say hi and say who you are and where you're from?
Hello, greetings from Argentina. I'm Maria Colusa. I teach English to adults from home, currently freelancing, and well, I'm happy to be here.
Okay, Gordon? Gordon's sound was working fine a moment ago. He's a teacher from Japan, and he says he follows this quite a lot. He happens to be on holiday at the moment, but otherwise he generally has to miss the live show, but he's happy to be here. We were talking to him earlier. While we were waiting for Benjamin, and here's Benjamin.
Hello.
How are you, Benjamin?
Great. Hello, hello, Maria. Hello, Gordon. Hello, everyone. Glad to be here, and happy to spend a few minutes sharing a couple of things that are coming up for me at where I teach. So, welcome.
Okay. And now Maria was saying something really nice about your materials earlier.
Yeah, I followed all the links that constitute your materials for this course, and I find them really very well graded, and I really think that your students will learn a lot by what you are doing. It's a minefield of content and guidance, and I think it's so well organized. Congratulations. But I've seen some of the other stuff you have also prepared, so I'm really not. I'm glad that you are part of my personal learning network. Congratulations.
Well, thank you, Maria. I really appreciate those comments, and certainly appreciate any feedback. It's hard to know going into this type of what I'm about to explain, this professional development workshop, and exactly how to go about presenting information online, trying to make it as simple as possible, but also have enough content there to make it worthwhile. So I do appreciate those comments, and certainly I'm open to any constructive criticism as far as finding ways to better put content out there online. And as I go through and discuss this, whether or not you're watching this recording or live, feel free to provide any feedback as far as ways that I can go about making the information a little bit clearer and making the process clear. But thank you, Maria, for those kind comments. I appreciate it. So I guess I'll go ahead and get started, Vince, unless you have anything else to cover before we get started.
Sure. I might just mention, I mentioned it to you earlier, that on this date, today, the 3rd of January, EVO is taking registrations. That's Electronic Village Online. So that's at evosessions.pbworks.com. I'll put that in the chat wing when Benjamin gets started. And I was kind of surprised that you were doing a workshop that started on the 11th of January, because that's when the EVO sessions start. They start on the 10th. But then you mentioned that this was actually something that you had set up, and what you're doing is you're doing it locally but sharing it globally, which is then it was time bound. So maybe next year we can see it as an EVO session, as that sounds like the kind of thing that you might want to stretch into 5 weeks and have a lot of participants if you're MOOC minded. Well, anyway, sure, tell us more about it.
Yeah, and I do encourage everyone to take a look at the EVO sessions and take part in those. I just so happened, yeah, as you mentioned, that the in-service workshop that I planned with teachers that I work with face-to-face happened to coincide with the EVO sessions this year. But certainly next year, be great if there are some opportunities to participate directly in EVO, that would be great. But, all right, I'll go ahead and get started now. And what I'd like to do is kind of go through briefly the whys and the hows of an upcoming workshop that I am working on currently. And I want to try to get through as much as I can as briefly as possible so that I leave some time that we can discuss, and I have some follow-up questions that I would like to pose to those who are attending today. And just to try to get a little bit more dialogue and discussion going around what I'm going to talk about this online workshop. As Vance mentioned, this is a face-to-face workshop that I'm planning with colleagues that I work with on a daily basis, and I work at the Universidad Autónoma de Aguascalientes. This is a public university in Mexico, in Aguascalientes, Mexico, and I teach a lot of courses related to academic writing and research, and I wanted to put together just a brief workshop with my colleagues because although we have certain courses in the program that we have a BA program in English language teaching. We have specific courses that are directly related to academic writing, but beyond that, we have many courses where students are expected to write academic essays. So although this course is not for all the teachers as far as in terms of the courses that they teach, there are a lot of academic writing assignments that students are expected to complete throughout the BA. So I wanted to kind of show you a little bit. Hopefully my screen now is being shared, and I am now showing you the first. This is the home page of the academic writing professional development workshop that I have set up here for educators here. Now, this is typically for English as a foreign language or English as a second language educator, but there might be, this might be of interest to anyone who's interested in, pursuing academic writing or improving their own academic writing skills. Now, the reason, another reason why I wanted to create this online workshop was to kind of look at it in three different areas. The first area is I wanted to come up with a driving question, an essential question for the educators that would relate to their own teaching practice. So getting started in this 5-day workshop, I wanted teachers who are all in-service teachers, by the way, to look at a question that would pertain to their own challenge, some of the challenges that they're facing currently. So I wanted them to look at what type of issues they are currently facing, because as you know, any type of writing endeavor, you need to have a good topic, you need to have something worth writing, and for this particular context, I wanted to have a question that could possibly later lead to some sort of action research project. If they come up with a question that they are looking at how they can improve in a certain area, whether it be pedagogical or whether it be focused more on learning, that they come up with an idea, a concept, a topic that they can look at, that they can help improve their own practice. So although this is a academic writing exercise, a workshop, getting started, it was very important, or it is important for us, the attendees, to come up with a question that they can focus on throughout this workshop, that they can write about, that they can research, that they can read the literature about, and come up with a thesis statement that they can develop an argument around that links directly to this area of improvement. So that's one area, the one focus of this workshop. The second is, of course, looking at the mechanics of writing. So this is where we get into how we go about writing and academic writing, rhetorical patterns, and how we go about developing ideas and premises and ideas, and how we go about doing the actual mechanics of the writing process. And the third area that I want to focus on throughout this 5-day workshop is related to pedagogy. So, and I'll show you some questions related to that. But throughout this workshop, I also wanted to come up with questions that just relate to pedagogy, specifically about teaching writing, and also pedagogical just in general, how they approach certain assessments and instructional processes that they relate to in their own teaching practice. So those are the three kind of areas that I wish to go after throughout this workshop. So it's not only about the mechanics of writing, but it also relates to this area of improvement and related pedagogy. So this main page here, I've set up just some general information about the course. And one of the links here in this main page is called Outliner. And I'll open up that. And this is kind of another view, another way that attendees can kind of look at some of the content that we'll be talking about throughout the 5-day workshop. So basically, and I should say now that everything that you see here is subject to change. I'm still in the process of coming up, and adding content. The course is scheduled to begin January 11th of 2016. So we are still about a week away or so. So I'm still adding and changing content. So as I mentioned earlier, again, I'm open to feedback. If there's some things that either you feel is missing, feel free to reach out and leave comments and let me know. Be really appreciative of that. But here we have basically, I have some of the content that we're going to be talking about here, and it's broken down into unity, coherency, cohesion, some of the mechanics of writing, and feedback. Feedback mainly being pedagogical, looking at different forms of assessment, and just how we go about giving feedback. So this is still work in progress, but this is more or less the information here that I'm going to be populating throughout, and probably will be adding to throughout the workshop itself. So it's going to be undergoing some changes as we go through, but this is just another view, and it's not to try to make things confusing, but I want to give the attendees options of how they can access the content. There may be some that just want to view the wiki and they want to just participate in the face-to-face sessions, and there'll be others, I would assume, that may feel more comfortable with this type of view in Diigo, where they look at the content more as an outline. But either way, there's no right or wrong way to participate here. Really, the idea is that each individual attendee, each person, kind of chooses what works for them. This is a 5-day workshop, so the day 1, day 3, and day 5 are face-to-face sessions. So we're going to be meeting 2 hours a day, and it'll be on a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then day 2 and day 4, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, there'll be an offline component where attendees will be expected to complete some sort of task offline. And
can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not able to see the outliner. It says it requires permission. But could you tell us more about that? What is it? It's obviously a Diigo tool. How does that work? What does it do?
Oh, okay, sure. So you can't see the outline.
It's I can't. I don't know if Maria or Gordon or Glennis can. Glennis has joined us. Yeah, can you see it, Maria? You can see. Okay, when I open it, it says. It says you need permission. It has a couple.
Okay, I'll tell you what. You're trying to access it directly from the wiki, correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So for now, maybe I'll just kind of go through it and discuss it a little bit just through the screen share, and then we can get together. If anyone cannot access the academic writing outliner, let me know, and I'll try to help you off, after the session.
Okay.
If that's all right.
What is it? What does it do?
Yeah, it's interesting. Diigo, I kind of left Diigo alone for a while. I used to use it a lot as a bookmarking source, to gather bookmarks. But they have come out, and I'm not sure when this happened, but they came out with a new feature called Outliner, and it's kind of a a way to manipulate or organize your bookmarks. So before, it was kind of cumbersome to kind of organize in some sort of logical fashion all of your bookmarks once you had it in Digo. But now with Outliner, you can basically organize your information in an outline and nest, you know, your ideas and organize those into groups and subgroups and so on, just as an outline. And you also have the ability to annotate. You can add comments to each one of the bookmarks. So it's kind of a more interactive way to kind of use all of those bookmarks and organize them in a way that, in this case, in a way that I would maybe approach organizing the ideas based on concepts, not necessarily on the order in which we're going to discuss them, if that makes sense. The wiki, I'm basically organizing it chronologically. So I have day 1, I have day 2, day 3. But in Outliner, what I can do is I can organize all of the content based on concepts, which for me I think is makes it a little bit easier. For example, I can organize information under unity, I can organize information under coherency and so on, and not have to organize it by time. I can discuss any of these concepts at any time, and that was the intention. So Outliner basically is just a way to outline your bookmarks.
Okay, and you've made these bookmarks, and I suppose you could have done it in Digo or Delicious, the way it used to be done, by creating a Unity tag, something particular to yourself, and pull them up that way. So this is actually a visualization where you actually curate. You've become a curator now.
Right.
It's not just pulling through the taxonomy. It was kind of designed at one point to do. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can still use tags. You know, you can still organize information that way if you're feeling, you know, if you like to use tags. I don't use tags that much, but you still have that option with Digo with Outliner. Yeah.
Well, that's nice. I have to look into that. So this is great information to learn new development with Digo, which me too. I used to use Digo a lot. I used to use Delicious a lot. Then Delicious got taken over by Yahoo, and it deteriorated, and then I moved everything over to Digo, but I don't really use it all that much anymore. I guess there are other curation tools. But anyway, yeah, that's a neat one. That's nice to know.
All right. So. Yeah, and please let me know if anyone is not able to access Outliner. And again, you can access Outliner from the main page by clicking here under the Welcome heading.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so moving on here, under navigation here, I'll go ahead and start talking about each of the days now. And under day 1...
Could I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
Sorry, Gordon here. Technical question. For those of us who can't access the Outliner due to permission, do you need to create an account with Digo in order to be able to access it?
That's a good question, and I'll tell you what, I'm going to create a shared link, because I'm kind of new to Digo as far as the Outliner and how this works. I'm going to copy this into the chat. Vance, if you want to upload it to Chatwing. Maybe let's see if that works. I'm not sure if I can answer your question, Gordon, but certainly we'll look into this after the session, and we'll try to help anyone to try to get into Outliner. I'm really not sure how that works. You may have to have an account, but I'm going to close my screen share.
Aren't you on Chatwing?
Well, I have Chatwing on my iPad.
Oh yeah, yeah. Anyway, okay. Because I can't, because I'm using Chrome, I can't copy from the text chat and put it into the Chatwing. But I might be able to open it. I can open it, or Maria.
Would you like me to do anything?
Yeah. Are you able to copy from the text chat in the Hangout?
Okay, I'll tell you what. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, for some reason I lost the Hangout window in Chrome, so I'm going to just upload the link in Wiki, under the welcoming screen. So
okay. You're fine here in the Hangout, by the way, as far as we know.
Okay, it's weird. There's something with, I don't know, Windows 10 or Chrome or something that I'm having some problems. Okay, so I just saved, if you're looking at the wiki under PBWorks, I just added a long link after the word outliner under the welcoming heading.
Okay.
And so,
perfect.
I don't know if it doesn't help, we'll have to get together after the session and I'll see if I can find out.
It works fine now. Thank you very much.
Okay, great, excellent. So what I'll do later on is I'll replace that link, that outliner link, with that. So kind of clean it up a little bit. Okay, great. Any other questions before I continue?
I'm just waiting for that link to open, and it is opening fine for me. Yes.
Okay, great. All right, I'll go ahead and continue. If anyone has other questions about the outliner, or comments, we can go back to that as well. Now, in day one, this is basically creating essential questions for day 1, day 3, and day 5. So the first day basically is, again, getting the attendees around this idea of coming up with a researchable problem so that they can develop a thesis statement that seeks to address that researchable problem. So this was going back to what I mentioned earlier about the importance of coming up or having the attendees come up with some sort of thesis statement that answers some sort of problem that they face, whether it be pedagogical or based on learning, and so that there's some sort of relevance. They have some sort of reason for actually writing something. So that's what day 1 really sets out to do, is to go out and try to find those concepts, that thesis statement that that the attendees feel is worth researching and learning and writing about. So that's basically day 1. Day 2, the idea here is to take that thesis statement and come up with what I refer to as the skeleton of an essay, which is what the attendees will be asked to complete. A 5-paragraph essay is looking at basically 4 key sentences. The thesis statement being 1, and the 3 topic sentences that will make up the first sentence of each of their body paragraphs. So they'll be asked to complete a 5-paragraph essay. The first paragraph will be the introduction, the last will be the conclusion, and they'll have 3 body paragraphs. So with my writing students that I work with a lot, one of the main problems is trying to get these 4 sentences right, trying to come up with a very good thesis statement that's coherent, that's clear, that's not too general, that's not too specific, and then taking that next step and coming up with topic sentences that, again, are not too general or too specific, that link directly to the thesis statement, right? So they're going to be asked to create some sort of an argumentative type of essay. So they are going to be asked to take a position and come up with claims as their thesis statements and topic sentences. And that's what day 2 sets out to do, is ask the attendees to come up with these 4 key sentences. So once they get those 4 sentences, then they can proceed on to day 3, where they will then start looking at developing one of the 3 body paragraphs. And we'll be talking about paragraph development, what that means, what that looks like, and looking at coherency and cohesion at the paragraph level. Day 2 kind of looks at coherency and cohesion based on the essay level, looking at those 4 sentences, making sure that they're all aligned. So day 3 looks at the paragraph level. Day 4, participants will be asked to complete the rest of their body paragraphs. And day 5, we'll be looking at actually the introduction and conclusion paragraphs. And so, in a nutshell, briefly, that's the content, that's the idea behind this 5-day workshop. And you'll notice that on day 1, day 3, and day 5, I've mentioned some teacher reflections that I want to include. Before I talk about the teacher reflections, so are there any questions over the content, the way in which I'm presenting these the content for each of these 5 days?
Yeah, it looks quite clear. I'm able to go to the wiki. We put the link here in the with my wife, Bobby. I've put the link in the text chat here as well as in Chatwing, and so anyone listening to this could follow in Chatwing and click on the navigation at the top of the page for day 1, 2, 3, and 5 and 4, and it seems to work just fine.
Okay. So just for the sake of time, I'm not going to go over the activities specifically, but you should be able to see if you are accessing the wiki, kind of look at the activity and see, see what activity the participants will be doing. And one of the reasons I was kind of debating at the very beginning of the academic workshop about how to go about, making this content available, and I've discussed with Vance in a prior session with the Learning Together community, my work with Office 365 and how some of my students are using Office 365, and I was very much considering using that same platform before. But the problem with Office 365 mainly is that it is basically it's a intranet setup. So there was no way for me to share all of this information with the public at large without them having to set up an account in Office 365, which would not be possible under since it's linked to the university. So that was one of the main reasons too. I wanted to use a wiki in this way so that this whole learning process was more transparent for all of the attendees, that everything was made available to anyone else who wished to participate. Others may wish to participate, they may not, but I wanted to at least show the potential of having this information be presented in this way so that they could see the value and hopefully interacting with others beyond the institution. So that was kind of the main reason. It's very much similar to MOOC. I don't really want to go into whether or not this is a MOOC or not, but yeah, the idea is basically making the whole learning experience transparent.
Yeah, transparent and open. And while we're on that topic, I want to just put into the recording here, in case someone is listening, the address of that wiki. It's Academic Writing PD, just one word, run that all together, academicwritingpd.pbworks.com. So if people went there, just listening to the recording, they could follow along what we're doing.
Great, thank you, Vance. Now, before I go into teacher reflection, I wanted to discuss one more thing very quickly, and this is kind of addressing the how of the workshop. And I created a shared wiki with links of all of the participants. Now, again, we haven't started, obviously, so there's nothing really to look at. And I'm just now looking at the links, and it's not taking me to it, so I'll have to look at that. But the idea here is that each of the participants will be working on or working in Word, Microsoft Word Online. And they will, obviously they could also use Google Docs if they chose to. But the idea is to open up each of their work and provide links so that all the participants can see all of the contributions of their colleagues. So to make both the feedback that I provide, if I provide feedback directly in the document, or if they want to provide feedback, they can do that as well. But the idea here is throughout the whole writing process that all the participants have their own respective Word Online document or Google Docs document, and each document is shared in this way so that it can be viewable to others. So I wanted to mention that. I failed to mention that at the beginning. And again, this document can be accessed from the main page down here at the bottom where it says Share Documents page. And this is where you can access those links. Of course, if you're participating, you could also add your link. If anyone really wants to contribute to this wiki, send me an email and I'll give you rights to do so. This is, again, going to be as open as possible. So if anyone wants to become a contributor to this particular wiki, feel free to let me know.
I might just interject here that we have a viewer online, someone in the stream, and we're chatting at chatwing.com/VANCESTEV. So if you have any, if anybody listening on the stream has any comments, just make them there, and we'll see them and respond.
Okay. So at this point, what I'd like to do is kind of ask a few questions. Now, unfortunately, I've lost my window for the Hangout, so I'm not really sure how I can finish or turn off screen share. But one of the questions I have...
Oh, you're not screen sharing.
Oh, I'm not?
Yeah, you're just sharing your, we see you.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, so that's fine, I guess. I can't see anyone else, so that's fine, I guess. But one of the questions I had, in fact, I don't know if I should, because I really wanted, it's kind of, let me see. Oh, okay, I'm back. I got it back. Okay. All right,
okay.
One of the questions I wanted to pose, and this is one of the questions that I'm asking here day one, and I wanted to ask all of you really how you go about, because again, the idea here is this is all within a formal educational context, right? So I'm assuming this teachers here are teaching in an institution where there's a curriculum and there are set goals that we must adhere to, that students must adhere to. One of the issues here that, or the questions that I wanted to pose is how do you go about reconciling individual goals, considering the needs, the interests, the learning preferences of the learners? How do we go about solving those goals while at the same time solving or working towards a curriculum, working towards a course goals? How do we bring those together? And of course, I'm thinking in terms of academic writing, but this could be more general. It could be really any course that you have given. If there are any ideas about how you go about trying to bring those two goals together, is it where we try to meet the goals of one and we sacrifice meeting the goals of the other, or is there a way that we can bring those two together and help solve both of those? So I wanted to kind of throw that out and get some of your feedback about how you address that, if it's a problem or if it's not a problem. Yeah, so...
Well, I can start if you want, Benjamin. Everywhere I go and I speak with my colleagues, they all complain that, or they say, "Wait, everything you say, Maria, is fine, but I have a book to follow. I have this curriculum to follow. I don't have time for this or that." And in my personal context, I can say that I have my own way of teaching and the way that that relates to me as a teacher. But then I have these students that come and they ask me to prepare them for a such and such exam, and even though I said I'm not going to prepare for exams anymore, I had this student this year who was a wonderful person, and I said, okay, let's go ahead. I'm going to help you. And that's something that that is not so me, because I believe that exams are not good for for learning English. But well, that's me. But so what I try to do is to focus on the exam skills and all that, and not to miss the ultimate goal, which is that this student keeps on liking learning languages and try to infuse that enthusiasm for learning languages, in spite of having to, in this stage, pass the exam. So I try to work on that motivation to learn. That's something that happened to me this year. I don't know.
Is the exam that this student is concerned about a requirement for the school where the school...
No, it's just a requirement of the mother. It's just,
Okay.
but there are. I know that there are students who have to sit for exams. Or I also have this year. I also have this teacher training college student who helped me to pass her exam, and she failed. So I said, I'm not good at this. That's why I made all the effort, and I hope she. I mean, she was meant to be a teacher, you know. And I said, well, which is that's what I find difficult to reconcile, you know.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you know, I know we've all been in that situation where even like in an institution, if the institution is asking for a certain proficiency test, and we're teaching a general English course, we're up against, okay, how much do we help them prepare for the test, or you know, just teach them English? And you know, this speaks a lot to how we assess, how much that influences how we teach and how students ultimately learn. Is how much influence does this assessment have? And you know, trying to reconcile that is difficult. Does anyone else have any other comments or opinions?
I'm just making a little pause to give other people a chance to chime in, but I think we all have strong opinions on this because, you know, if you're not so fortunate to be able to allow people to write what they want to write, that's a problem. For example, the IELTS program is I'm kind of locked into an IELTS system in my teaching. So what I try to do is I rewrite the prompts so that if students are asked to complain about something, I'll take something like, for example, they just deregulated petrol prices here and the prices went up. So I rewrote the prompt. You're a consumer and you've just been hit with these increase in petrol prices, things because the ministry deregulated the product. And so what do you do? So you write your letter about that, and just I use that as an example because all the students were really angry about it. So they really enjoyed writing to their putative ministers. But and another one too, I just was over here Googling on my other computer. Another thing I have played with is thesis statement generators. So if you, I use I created a spreadsheet where you could pull down different things to create topics, or you could write in the topic that you want. And I just Googled it over here. It looks like Purdue OWL has a thesis statement generator, and I also found that if you go to thesis statement generators free, you can find a lot of them as well. So it's not an original idea. Well, it's an original idea for me, but I just realized now that a lot of people are doing it. So that also gets people to, you know, if you use a good thesis generator where someone will start with a thesis, and of course they can manipulate it so it fits the pattern. It's actually a thesis, and it's an argument that they have to support. Then that also might help if they can manipulate that. They get the thesis right, but it's about their topic. So there's a couple of suggestions that just came to mind.
Yeah, getting the thesis statement right is really important, as you alluded to. And if they can use this generator, I certainly would like to look at that. I haven't looked at that. Maybe you could share that in the chat room. But yeah, it's important, again, going back to those 4 sentences that I typically work with my students, trying to get that right, making sure topic sentences align, support the thesis statement. I'm curious, Vance, when you mentioned the example that your students do when they're writing letters and things, do you have them write actual letters to actual people to actually use for a particular purpose?
Well, that's another thing you could do, I suppose. You could how would you work? I know what you're talking about. You could say, the context escaped me, but you can actually go online and find people you can write to. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you know, maybe not the example that you provided would be probably the best situation. Maybe, I don't know, but I was just thinking like finding, depending on the purpose of writing, you know, what type of writing that you're trying to help them with, but for them to find an actual reason to write an actual letter in English and help them develop that and actually send it and ideally get a response from that person and have them make it a little bit more authentic in that regard. Actually have them use the letter for a particular purpose. Have you explored those? I haven't. That's why I'm asking if you've had experience or if anyone's had experience with that type of exercise.
Yeah, you could always just have someone write a letter of request or complaint to an actual entity, whether or not, and they might get a response, which, they compose a letter, and there's always a chance of a response, which would, which would make the class even that much more interesting.
Yeah, and you could actually have that turn that into a classroom discussion about what might be the anticipated response, and how might they reply, and all of that. Great. Anyone else want to have any other ideas or thoughts?
Yeah, just a general. I guess if I understand your first question right, and sorry, it's almost midnight here, so I'm fading a little bit, but I quite often discuss with my co-teacher about the ideal way to teach, how we should be teaching, versus this concept that, we have to do all this testing, we have this testing. And I'm involved in the English conversation classes. And we have our own little curriculum that was approved by on the national level, and I sometimes you kind of want to go, you're hitting your head up against a brick wall, but it's like, wait a second, have you actually read the curriculum? Have you actually read the goals? Because we're working towards these goals, and I don't see, but the argument keeps coming back. The answer is, no matter how you try to run it, and I provide us other information in Japanese. It's one of the Japanese teachers, and I try to provide information to them in their own native language, written by other Japanese people, written by members from the Board of Education on the local level, plus the Ministry of Education, and saying, these are our goals. Our goals are not those tests that you're talking about. But I understand you need that test preparation. Okay, well then do it in your other classes. Don't bring it into our classes that are based on communication skills, speaking skills, and listening skills. So I just go back to questioning, okay, what is the definition of our ideal goal? Or sorry, what is the definition of our curriculum? Do you actually truly understand the curriculum? And that's reach out to all the different students, all their different needs, and make sure they have a great attitude, they enjoy the process of learning, that they develop an interest in the outside world and stuff like that. So I guess to summarize that, it's do they understand, or what is your definition of sorry, I'm losing it here. What am I trying to say? I'll leave it at that. But yeah, the definition of what your curriculum goals are.
Yeah, and Gordon, that's a good point. And one of the follow-up questions I had for you would be like, well, how do the standardized tests approach? You mentioned that you give conversational courses. So is there a conversational component to the standardized tests that the students are required to take? And or are the goals of the course in the curriculum, do they specifically mention passing some sort of exam, or are they more conversational goals?
Yes, the tests are being talked about, and it's always been, as long as I've been here, 8 years or so, it's been talked about, and changing the test, the entrance exams, to include speaking and listening on them instead of them just being a written test. But until, I think that's one of the big obstacles there too, is until that's actually tested and actually measured and tested, it'll always be one of those, oh, that would be great, but sorry, finished.
No. So those are, you're mentioning entrance exams, and there are also exit exams. Is that correct? The students Is that
entrance exams? Yeah, entrance exams into high school and into college.
okay? Okay, so you teach high school students?
Not this year. Not currently. Some colleges do have their own individual exams that also include a speaking and listening component to it. But as far as the general national-wide standard, it's just a written test.
Yeah, that's you know, we're talking about standardized tests. That's definitely a big factor when we're trying to, again, go back to reconciling these student goals versus curricular goals. When you've got standardized tests kind of looming over us, that becomes a challenge. Okay. Anyone else want to chime in?
Well, I guess one thing that I feel some of my colleagues think that they have to teach to the test to the extent that they'll actually insist the students do it on paper because that's the way they have to take it, and that compromises the kind of feedback you can give. I always do my work in Google Docs, or actually, you know, we have Office 365. I've discovered, and we have access to it. And your podcast that you did with us was very useful in learning more about that, actually. And how we could share documents online. But in any event, however you do that, that's, I think, one of the importances of being digital in the process and not being concerned that the students are not replicating the exam situation in their when they actually take the exam, because what you're trying to do is teach them how to write. If they can't organize their writing, they're going to do poorly on the test. I mean, it's not really going to work to get them to memorize something. It just doesn't work, you know. To follow a pattern, you know, you really want to get to the core if you have the time, and teach writing. And so that's, I think, a point to make.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of people, a lot of administrators in particular, feel they forget the fact that the exams are meant to evaluate proficiency, and the teacher should focus on the proficiency. It's not that they can take a test well, which, as we know, may or may not be an indication of their fluency. So we focus on the fluency, we focus on the grammar, the vocabulary, the skills, we develop those, and you know, the idea is if we've done that well, then that will be reflected in the standardized test. But you know, as we know, that doesn't necessarily happen in real life, that we tend to a lot of times feel we need to teach to the test, as it were, and which is, in my view, rarely a good endeavor, good thing. So yeah, it's one of those realities.
Go ahead, Gordon. Yeah.
I was going to say, well, you just hit a good point, and that's you're taught to memorize, memorization, and you're taught to learn this formula, this grammar translation formula, and x equals y and y equals z, and then z, anyways. But yeah, you got a couple things you brought up there too. And one, the conditions they take the test in versus how the class is run, and it's just memorizations. So what is your understanding of learning? What are they actually learning? And
exactly.
Yeah, they're not acquiring.
Exactly. And some students just don't take tests well. I mean, they freeze, they get nervous, and it's really not even representative of what they can do with the language. So yeah, it boils down to what is learning, looking at.
I can attest to that on a personal level. I've definitely bombed some tests that I know I knew the information grade on. So that's why eventually I got to where I enjoyed essay tests and writing essays so much better than, yeah, a lot more fill in the blank or even short answer.
Yeah, and that's kind of where we go back to the different forms of assessment, going back to looking at the classroom and putting aside for a moment standardized tests, looking at how do we evaluate, how do we assess students, and looking at the writing skill, or basically any skill, but looking at writing and looking at how much do we focus on the product itself versus the process, and how do we go about providing feedback for both of those in a timely fashion. So I would throw out another question to you all. What do you think about, or how do you go about looking at your assessment, and how important is the final product versus the process?
Well, one of the things I remember doing was, which I often do, since I teach lots of conversation classes. I'm focused on the what. What is it that you want to say? When I took a photography course, the teacher used to say, "Okay, Maria, well, he told me bluntly, this picture is." Well, I can't say the word, but this picture is, what do you want to say? And I didn't know that you could say something with a picture, with a photograph, and this helped me also translate that to teaching. What is it that you want to say, either in writing, or is it? And sometimes, I mean, no, every class is a wonderful discovery, because my students, I learn a lot with my students. And so the task, or the challenge, would be to make them feel comfortable so that they can say what they have to say. Be it a task for a preparation for an exam, or whatever. But sometimes the teacher, I find that the students, they just want to finish with it, to get done with it, and they don't say anything. And you can have a full paragraph without any content, and maybe a perfect grammar, or no spelling mistakes, but what's the point of this paragraph? And what's the point sometimes of saying a lot of words if you're not communicating anything? So that's my view.
And that comes to task design, because if the teacher, if the students are told to write a request on this topic, well, they don't want to say that, and so of course they're going to produce the kind of thing that Maria couldn't say a minute ago. So so your task design is so important. How can you really engage your students if you really want to teach writing? How do you do? And a question for you, Benjamin, because we're at the top of the hour here. It's not like we have to leave anytime soon, but I want to make sure we get focused on this. We got some echo coming back. Might be from you, Benjamin. Not sure. Yep, it was. Okay. All right. So the question for you is, how do you address these things in your workshop? How do you get people to inspire their learners and to avoid the traps of teaching to the test and things like that?
Well, I'll speak more to, instead of the workshop, more to my experience that I've had with writing courses, primarily with pre-service English language teachers in the BA. I'll be honest, this is something that I've kind of gone back and forth over the years, looking at how I look at the process versus the product, because I recognize students advance at different rates. So some students really come together at the end of the semester. Some students make progress throughout the semester. So looking first at the product, the actual product, what's very important for me, and this kind of speaks to Maria's point about developing a good photograph, like what is a good photograph? Having the expectations articulated between the teacher and the students from the very beginning, I think, is very important. And we can think in terms of using a rubric, and just having a discussion. Well, what does a good photograph look like? What does a good paragraph look like? What does a good essay look like? Even before the actual task or instruction begins, just to get everyone kind of on the same page and say, okay, these are the expectations. These are this is the criteria that we're looking for a good essay, so that the students from the very beginning know what to work towards. So in terms of the product, for me, I think having that discussion from the very beginning, and then continually having that discussion throughout the process, I think helps. So there's kind of a mix between this dialogue of what is a good product, working towards something, our goals here of creating something that is, that's good, and then looking at the process and working towards that. So I think if we don't have that discussion from the very beginning, we have these surprises. We have this, we create a picture, and then we talk to our instructor, and they say, oh, no, this is horrible. Well, I didn't know what you were looking for, right? Or maybe I didn't understand what a good picture looked like. So you don't, for me personally, I want to try to avoid having those types of discussions with my students by, again, articulating the goals from the very beginning, typically in the form of a rubric. And you can decide whether or not the rubric is a standardized rubric, or if the students themselves are helping to create that rubric. There's a lot of different ways of going about that. But I think just having those expectations clear from the very beginning, I think, is important. And then the process, I'll be honest, I've gone back and forth, looking at, giving grades as far as them making progress, every week, every month, versus just how they looking more in terms of the process as a whole. So I don't penalize some students for coming around, so to speak, or actually developing what I was looking for later on in the semester. I've tried to be a little, I guess, more flexible in the process, so that at the end, if they've come around and I see that there has been improvement, I try to reflect that in the grades, so not to penalize those who are, a little bit more, maybe it takes them a little bit longer to acquire the skills that we're looking for. Now, of course, having said that, there are cases where students aren't just participating, right, and they're not making an effort, and those would be different cases that I would take, I would consider differently with regard to grading the process. So, it's a long answer here, but basically, that's kind of how I looking at the process and the product. I think there's a relationship between the two. I don't treat them completely separate, but I think just being accessible and trying to give them the feedback that they need is important. And when I say the feedback that they need, I'll conclude by saying that some students that I have like a lot of feedback. They will send me emails, and I will give them tons of feedback, while at the same time other students will be, they'll get discouraged by having so much feedback. So I try to accommodate those different types of students to give them enough feedback and provide the feedback, those who want more to do more, but those who feel frustrated to kind of hold back and try to find that sweet spot, so to speak, on how much feedback, when to give it, what type of feedback to give, and so on.
Do you plan then on having, can you imagine and set aside just-in-time process scaffolding for those students? Is that something that you have like a couple of cards up your sleeve per se?
If I understand your question, I'll answer. You tell me if I am not addressing your question. What I typically do, and I touched on it briefly when I was describing the workshop, but I have my students also share documents online. Where we used Microsoft Word Online this last semester, where again all of the documents are shared, so all the students can see all of the work of their classmates. In our classrooms, we have big screens that have access to the internet. So the way that it typically works is they'll have some sort of writing assignment. They will complete it online, and that will be accessible to us face-to-face in our face-to-face courses or classes via some screen, and we can have discussions and around giving them feedback in real time in class, right? So, well, it's not real time in the sense that they're there. They're not writing at that particular moment, but they have created a text. I'm giving them feedback in class, and that's one way. Another way is, of course, them working outside of class, them sending me an email, some sort of notification. I go in and give them feedback. Now, that could be in real time in the sense that they're at home at that particular moment and they send me something and I'm online, and that happens quite a bit. It may even lead to an online discussion if need be, but typically it's just an email. I send them feedback, and whether it's synchronous or asynchronous just depends on whether or not I'm online or connected when they send me the email, and so on. So there's kind of a mix between synchronous and asynchronous feedback, and it's both a mix between face-to-face, as we see each other every day throughout the week, and of course offline via just accessing and outside of class. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that works. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for the question.
Yeah, as I see what you're doing, is you're modeling for your teacher trainees how, by having them create a writing, you're modeling for them how you would give feedback and how they might in turn teach their writing courses in that way. And that got me thinking that I've had a lot of success with blogging sometimes by obviously you can give feedback in a certain way if you have them produce Word documents. You can do what's it called, the error tracking, the tracking, and correction tracking. And if you're in Google Docs, you can have all kinds of resources for giving feedback that doesn't discourage students because they can just clean it up. As they clean it up, it goes away. So, but blogging is a different. That's where you really get to say what you want to say, and a lot of students like that kind of thing, having a blog, and teachers like it too. And so sometimes when I've done a teacher workshop, I'll have them keep a blog. It could be separate from what you're doing, but just say at the end of each week or the end of each, you're doing this for 1 week, but periodically, every couple of days, produce a blog post, talk about what you're doing, feedback on that, and let them see how that feels, because that's also a really nice way of expressing yourself, and it might show them how you can, how it feels to write what you want to write.
Yeah,
well,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and that actually, even the concept scaffold, the concept of feedback. I mean, it wasn't until I was, I was working in banking right after college, and that process of getting used to being providing good feedback to other people, but even that culture, developing that culture is a good process in small steps.
Absolutely, and I think small steps is the key word there. I agree, Vince, with the importance of having blogs. I teach a writing course with my students where they're asked to create blogs and share basically what their work in Microsoft Word Online, and then move that over to their personal blog and encourage this whole culture of sharing. In terms of the workshop, though, I wanted to basically, I don't want to overwhelm them with technology, so the idea here is first stick with the wiki and the outliner and kind of get a feel, because I'm not sure how it's all going to, how it's going to work out. But certainly, I think the importance of blogging, I'm a big proponent of teacher blogs, and encourage both pre-service students or teachers to blog, and certainly my colleagues as well. Okay, any other comments or suggestions or opinions about assessing or assessment?
Oh, one nice thing about blogging also, and Benjamin, you'll need to mute because I'm coming in really loud as an echo. Yeah, okay. Is that another kind of assessment is peer assessment? Because if you actually get people to comment on the blogs, then that is a different level of feedback. That kind of feedback is very important. As you said, that you try to adjust your feedback according to students who want to have every error corrected versus the ones who want some kind of general feedback. But that peer feedback is a really important aspect of blogging.
Yeah, and with blogging too, you have an opportunity or the students have an opportunity to receive feedback that is more content-based. It's not so much, I mean, you certainly could focus on the mechanics, but I typically have students, when I ask them to comment on their student blogs or their classmates' blogs, is to just focus on the opinions, what's being said, and not worry about making mistakes. Just try to get your ideas across. And I think that in and of itself also is a good exercise, so that they don't they're not overwhelmed by always thinking, oh, I've got to write it grammatically correct all of the time. That there's this space that they feel free to share and articulate themselves in a target language where they're not under the scrutiny of making error in punctuation and that type of thing. So I think that's a good point. Trying to mix those two, where they're asked to write just for the enjoyment, just for a reason to share an opinion, versus maybe under a more microscope type of view where they're looking at more of the mechanics and coherency and coherence. All right.
We haven't heard anything from Glennis, not even a hello. Maybe Glennis, would you like to say hi to us from there in France?
Sure. It's I'm a bit. I mean, I retired over 5 years ago when things were a bit different, and the courses I ran. I mean, I was in charge. I decided I didn't have. Well, I did occasionally prepare for TOEIC and TOEFL and things like that. I hated it, and I think I'm not the only one. But the academic courses I ran them on Moodle, and I just used my own ideas of what was appropriate for that particular group of people. They were extremely varied in their level of English. There were near beginners to people who were really fluent. So I felt it wasn't really fair to judge them on what they produced, because in a course that was equivalent to something like 30 hours face-to-face, I mean, maybe I'm not a very good teacher, but I couldn't make them make really appreciable difference to their level in English in 30 hours. So I got them to do lots of things that were related, both I mean, blogs I didn't know about at the time. I tried to get them to use wikis. They had a great deal of trouble understanding how they functioned and what they could do with them. These were distance learning courses. I never saw the students face to face, so communication was quite difficult. But I got them to work a lot on forums and a lot of collaborative. They had projects that they had to do in groups of 3 or 4, which for the ones who managed to do it worked very well. They liked it very much because they were in different countries, and they they managed to get themselves organized to produce something that they could then test out on the other students. That worked very well. But I was working over a 3-month period, not a 5-day period, which is different. And for the accuracy part of it, I used I made my own, either my own or sometimes other people's interactive exercises on different aspects of academic writing, mainly based on abstracts because they're short. And they're still online if anyone's interested. But I mean, I feel I'm really out of date because so much that can be done now couldn't be done 5 years ago.
You should paste the link in our chat wing and we can have a look. That would be interesting.
Where is it? And I should say that this is where I used to work, and I should say that not mine. Oh, what happened?
Okay, so a collection
because they're made by someone else, but the site has been redone by a technician who doesn't understand about giving people their due. It's the first one called, just so that you know, is done by someone you maybe heard of, by Elizabeth Hanson Smith.
Oh,
There's
yes.
no relation.
Yes.
No relation to me, but we just happen. It's hers.
Well, yeah. Okay. Well, when we'll let you work offline, and or you can be thinking of, you can be doing that while we're concluding here.
Yes, I put it in the chat.
Yes. Okay. All right. So maybe Maria, you can paste it, copy it into, or we can just hit it, or maybe you could paste it for us, Maria, over the chat wing. That's Maria's job.
It's already there. I put it there already.
Great, Gordon. That's Gordon's job. We got lots of helpers here. Okay, wonderful.
It must be lag on your end or something. Something like that.
Yeah, well, I'm using Chrome, and I need to use Firefox for this because you can copy and paste from the Firefox Java, but you can't do it in Chrome. So anyway, this is the way it is. Well, okay. Any further comments? Questions for Benjamin? More remarks, Benjamin? Go ahead.
Well, if there are no more questions, certainly appreciate everyone attending and those who are viewing the recording. And just want to conclude by saying that if anyone has any questions or comments about the course itself, if they want to participate or they want to contribute to the wiki itself, or just want to leave comments, feel free to let me know. I'm more than happy to provide that information or to assist. And thanks, Vance, for taking the time to give me a space here to share this. And yeah, thanks everyone. Appreciate it.
Well, yeah, on that note, we didn't have anything for the last couple of weeks here. So both of our last sessions were just brought together at the spur of the moment. We were in episode 306 when Maha Abdul Monim said, "Oh, you should see this tool called Blab." So that was episode 307, and that was just organized within that week. And then Benjamin just came along now at the very last minute and offered to do this for us. This is episode 308, I should say. And coming up, though, since we have the Electronic Village Online sessions, we have full to brimming, mostly with my Minecraft colleagues. So there's going to be a lot of emphasis on Minecraft coming up in the next few weeks. But and then after that, again, we hit a little bit of a doldrum. So if anybody would like to contribute here, any listeners, anybody in the chat here or wherever you are, we run, and for 308 sessions already, we've done it the same way. We just get colleagues to talk about what they're doing and what they're passionate about, and everyone is welcome to contribute or to help us to learn or share an expertise with us or start a topic that we'd like to discuss.
Vance, this is just a quick question. So these weekly sessions in January, once you begin with the EVO sessions, will they be pertaining to those EVO sessions? Do I understand you right?
Yeah, but only because I've asked my co-moderators in the session to talk about Minecraft, and but there could be other sessions as well. Lots of people in EVO are putting on sessions, and as I find out about them, and if they're of interest and they want people to join them, if they're open as we are, then I list them at Learning Together. So you can go to the learningtogether.pbworks.com, and you can find the schedule of what's coming up. And I expect that to be kind of full for the next few weeks as people announce their sessions. A lot of times they use Blackboard Collaborate, which is on a grant to Webheads in Action, and from learningtimes.com. So they've been giving us that, and we schedule events there as well. So when people schedule them, they have to schedule them if they're going to use the room. Then we know about them. So we'll put all these things that we know about at the Learning Together wiki. And if you come to learningtogether.net, learningtogether.pbworks.com, you'll find the schedule there. And once they're done, they're archived at learningtogether.net.
Great. I see that Maria's uploaded the link to the EVO sessions. Great, thank you, Maria, for sharing that.
Not at all. Hope to see you all there.
Yeah, those are nice, busy times for the next couple of weeks. But then in February, we're back to organizing on the spur of the moment. Okay, well, anyway, thank you very much. This is the 3rd of January, 2016, episode 308 of Learning Together. We've been talking to Benjamin Stewart in Aguascalientes, Mexico, and other people who joined us as well. And so nice to see everybody, and thanks as usual. By the way, Benjamin has a Google Plus community, Teachers for Interactive Language Learning, and it's got thousands of members. How many thousand? How many does it have?
It's over 3,000 now. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, so it's a pretty substantial community. He keeps it going pretty well. Curates his lots of links at the community page. So maybe we could stick a. I'll put that. If that doesn't appear in the link to it doesn't appear, I'll put it in chat wing. Okay.
Great.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks everybody. Take care.
Okay. Good night.
Sorry. Thank you very much for letting me join in, and Happy New Year to everyone.
Welcome
Thank you.
anytime, Gordon. Yeah.
Thank you, Gordon. You too. Take care.
Thank you. Good luck with the course.
Thank you, Maria.
Bye.
Bye, Glenn. Thank you.
Bye-bye.